Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. We are the study team 2, representing GW Pharmaceuticals, the sponsor of this clinical trial. Today we are conducting a site initiation visit. The objectives of this visit are to provide training on the study protocol, clarifying any concerns you may have about study-related procedures, and ensure everything is in place before the site activation. We'll start describing roles and responsibilities. Trisha Egner will present the protocol overview and general study procedures. Surit Banskota will talk about collection and reporting of adverse events, data collection and source documentation. Tilak Patak will describe the investigation of product and clinical monitoring. And finally, Sonali Patel will review the investigator site file and summarize the action items for this visit.
The principal investigator is responsible for the conduction of the study at the site, the protection of participants' safety and integrity of the data collected, also for the oversight of the study activities and personnel. Sub-investigators are physicians responsible for prescribing the intervention and reviewing the progression of the patients. The study coordinator is responsible for recruiting, consenting, and screening participants, coordinating daily study-related activities, ensuring the protocol is being properly followed, and keeping all essential documents up to date and accessible for inspections. Data managers are responsible for the data entry, validation, and query resolution. Research nurses are responsible for patients' assessments and documentation of data in case report forms. Pharmacy personnel is responsible for the investigational drug storage and accountability. Laboratory staff is responsible for collecting blood and urine samples and sending them to GW Central Laboratory. According to ICH GCP guidelines, the delegation of duties must be documented in the delegation of activities log. It must be completed and signed by the principal investigators and the research staff members, including the names, responsibilities, initials, signatures, and the duration of their participation, start and end dates. Establishing an efficient communication is key for the success of this trial. We are the liaison between the site and the sponsor and will provide you with constant support via email, phone call, newsletters, fax, and teleconferences as needed. Here's a list of important contact information you will need.
Now, coming to the clinical study, it is a multi-centered, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial for children and young adults diagnosed with Dravet syndrome. Here is the study design. The study plans to enroll 100 participants who will be randomly allocated to receive an oral solution of GWP 42003P or placebo in a 1:1 ratio. The randomization will be stratified based on age into 3 groups of 2 to 5 years, 6 to 12 years, and 13 to 18 years. The primary objective of this study is to evaluate the efficacy of GWP 42003P as an adjunctive anti-epileptic drug compared to placebo in the percentage change of convulsive seizure frequency from baseline during the study treatment period. The study has 3 secondary objectives. First, to evaluate the effect of the investigational product as an adjunctive treatment on the frequency of non-convulsive seizures, on the duration of seizures, on the need of rescue medications, the number of epilepsy-related hospitalizations, and other behavioral changes from the baseline when compared with placebo. The trial also plans to study the effect of the investigational product on plasma concentration of other anti-epileptic drugs and also to assess the safety of the investigational product when compared to placebo. The key inclusion criteria for this study is that the patient is between 2 to 18 years of age and has been diagnosed with Dravet syndrome and is not fully controlled by current anti-epileptics. The patient has 4 or more convulsive seizures in the first 4 weeks of the baseline period. The patient is being treated with 1 or more anti-epileptics, the dose of which has been stable for the last 4 weeks. The key exclusion criteria are that the patient has other significant clinical comorbidities, abnormalities in physical examination, laboratory findings, liver function tests, and ECG. A patient using cannabis, alcohol, or grapefruit juice and who is unwilling to abstain from these will also be excluded. A patient with hypersensitivity to cannabinoids or other constituents of the interventions will also be excluded from this trial. Females of childbearing potential who are not on any contraception, who are currently pregnant or breastfeeding will be excluded. Patients who have been enrolled in another clinical trial in the last 6 months or Part A of the study will be excluded. Those who have suicidal behaviors or ideations will also be excluded. Now, talking about the visits. The first visit is the screening visit B1. Once the patient arrives, you will obtain the informed consent and the assent. Next, you will conduct a medical interview, collecting certain information from the patient. You will then conduct a physical examination and also perform an ECG. Next, the patient will give his blood and urine samples while you complete a diagnostic review form to submit to the ESC. As you wait for the lab results, you will administer the CSSRS questionnaire. After this, you will review the lab results and the ECG with the physician. If the patient is deemed eligible, she or he will enter a 28-day baseline period. You will now train the caregivers to identify seizure types and record them in the IVRS. You will also provide them with a paper diary and explain to them how to document medications and adverse events. You will record the patient's attendance for the visit and also the outcome of the visit. You will give general instructions on recognizing and managing adverse events, avoiding prohibited substances, contact details, and a visit schedule. You will schedule the next visit after 28 days and ask the patient to bring the IVRS and the patient diary. The next visit is the randomization visit B2. Like before, you will take the patient history, perform a physical examination, and an ECG. You will send the patient to give blood and urine samples while you review the IVRS and the patient diary to measure the seizure frequency. Next, you will review the lab results and the ECG with the physician and also verify the ESC confirmation of diagnosis. Once eligibility is confirmed, the patient will be randomized as described earlier. You will administer the questionnaires relevant to the visit. You will calculate the titration and maintenance dose for each patient and provide them with allotted interventions. You will also instruct them about the proper storage and give a written schedule for taking the drug. You will record the patient attendance and outcome for the visit and provide them with general instructions like the previous visit. This time, you will also inform them about compliance with the regimen and ask them to bring the drug bottles at the next visit, which will be scheduled after 14 days. The following in-clinic visits, B3, B4, and B6, will be conducted in a similar manner. You will review the patient diary for adherence to the regimen. You will also review the IMP compliance by checking the amount of drug that is left in the bottles. The drug renewal will occur every 28 days, and each time you will provide them with a schedule and instructions to take the drugs. You will also collect previously used or unused bottles while giving new medications. You will end the visit in a manner similar to previous visits and schedule the next visit as per the protocol. The end of treatment or the withdrawal visit has a few additional procedures. In this visit, you will provide patients with an option to enroll into the open label extension study, and those unwilling to enroll will undergo a tapering of the dose 10% per day over the next 10 days. You will provide a new individualized dosing schedule which has been confirmed by the PI. Instructions to the patients remain the same. You will schedule the next visit, which is B9, 10 days later, followed by a phone call visit, which is B10, 4 weeks after B9. Safety telephone calls will be made during visit B5, B7, B10, and also on a weekly basis between visits B9 and B10. You will collect information about concomitant medications, adverse events, and epilepsy-related hospitalizations. Here is a schedule of assessments for this study. You can refer to this in your protocol.
Now, we'll discuss about participant safety. We'll understand the definitions of adverse events and the types, and we'll see how we can collect and report them. So adverse events are any new unintended results, signs or symptoms or worsening of pre-existing conditions occurred between the screening and the safety follow-up visits, that is from visit B1 to B10, regardless of it being related or not with the investigational drug or the study procedures. Serious adverse events are those adverse events that must meet the following criteria. It leads to death, threatens life, leads to inpatient hospitalization or prolongs the hospital stay, it leads to significant disability, it is congenital defect, or it is medically remarkable event. Sometimes we may see unexpected safety issue or unanticipated problems. These are defined as any adverse events discovered outside the study time frame from visit B1 to B10 which might have impact on participants' safety. These problems should be addressed as serious adverse events. Here is an overview of how adverse events and serious adverse events are collected and reported. Adverse events are collected in diaries and adverse event sections of case report forms. Serious adverse event and unexpected problems are collected in adverse event sections of case report forms and serious adverse event forms. An additional serious adverse event form can be used to report such kind of serious adverse events or unexpected problems. If the unexpected problems are post-study, then it may not be recorded. Both serious adverse events and unexpected problems should be faxed to GW Pharmacovigilance Department within 24 hours and reported to Research Ethics Board. While reporting of serious adverse events and adverse events, it should include what was the diagnosis, what was the signs and symptoms of the event. It should have the start date and when it was stopped, and what was the outcome of the event. For example, whether the patient was recovered or recovered with some sequel, whether the recovery is continuing or patient died. Similarly, what was the severity of the event? Was it mild? Was it moderate? Or was it severe? And what was the action taken by the investigator with the IMP due to adverse events? Whether it was no action was taken, whether the dose was reduced temporarily, whether the dose was totally reduced, whether the IMP was interrupted, and whether it was stopped. There must be causality assessment by principal investigator. Investigator must report suspected causal relationship to the IMP and with reasoning and evidences. In case of fatality, working diagnosis or reason of death as mentioned in autopsy results must be sent to GW Pharmacovigilance Department as soon as possible. If the investigator is aware of participants becoming pregnant while receiving IMP or within 90 days of receiving final dose of IMP, then that should be reported to GW Pharmacovigilance Department within 24 hours. The investigator should complete the GW pregnancy monitoring form and provide the outcome of pregnancy if possible. If the investigator is aware of pregnancy after 90 days of final dose of IMP, then he is not obliged, but it should be reported as mentioned before, and GWP department will follow up the outcomes. Now we'll discuss about data collection and source documentation. Source documents are those documents which are original and used to complete the participants' case report forms such as hospital records, clinical and official charts, laboratory and pharmacy records, diary, electronic data captured by IVRS. But these are not limited to these items only. Case report forms must be considered as source of data if it is the original recording and there is no other record of data. Investigators should have a list of qualified people authorized to make entries or corrections in case report forms, and this should be included in delegation log of GW. Case report forms should be completed within 5 working days of the visit using black or blue ball pen. The answers of the queries should be given within 5 working days. The complete case report forms must be signed and dated by principal investigators. When corrections are made in case report forms, it should have just single line stroke followed by the insertion of the correction above or beside the error identified and must contain the initial of person who corrected it and the date of the correction made. There should be a perfect pre-designed data source verification plan to identify source for each data point at the site. Electronic data collected for assessment via IVRS will be managed by the service provider in accordance with GCP and in adherence with the quality management system. For data retention, the site should maintain a comprehensive data filing system suitable for inspection at any time by GW or Health Canada authorities. The element to be retained includes patient file, that should contain case report forms, informed consent forms, assent forms, and source documentation. The study file that must include protocol with all amendments, investigation brochures, copies of pre-study documents, and all correspondence to and from the REB and GW. IMP file should contain proof of receipt, IMP accountability record, return of IMP for destruction, final IMP reconciliation statement, and all drug-related correspondence. All the original source document must be in good condition and readily available.
Now I am going to discuss about the investigational product called GWP 42003P. This is formulated from the derivative of cannabis plant called cannabinoids, also known as CBD. CBD is the second most common compound found in cannabis plant. The purified form of CBD is used as an active ingredient in this product, which contain 95% of CBD and 0.5% of THC. CBD has an anti-convulsion effect with a good safety profile in human beings, and it is available in 100 ml oral solutions. This table shows the formulation of active compound and placebo. Placebo doesn't contain any CBD. Specific storage system is key factor to maintain effectiveness of drug throughout the study cycle. This drug should be kept in upright position at room temperature and away from direct heat and sunlight. And temperature logs should be maintained in daily basis. If there are any evidence of deviation from the specified condition, the investigator should notify to the monitor, and all investigational products should be kept in quarantine until the further notification received from the sponsor. Investigator and authorized person are responsible to receive, store, and dispense investigational product. After receiving investigational product, the staff should acknowledge and complete the required documentation. Before dispensing, pharmacists should verify and record the patient identification code, expiry date, physical appearance, and package condition. Principal investigator has overall responsibility of investigational product during the entire study period. The investigational product accountability will be verified during monitoring visit, addressing the amount of investigational product received from sponsor and participants' identification number, dispensing amount and date to study participants, amount and date of return and use unused drug from participants, and initial of authorized dispenser. The sponsor is responsible for final disposition of IMP. All supplies, including unused, partially used, or empty container, will be returned to GWP. All IMP related records should be stored and secured with study regulatory file for same duration of time. Unblinding will be conducted in case of emergency conditions where unblinding is essential to decide medical treatment. Principal investigator or authorized persons must know how to access to treatment allocation in case of emergency conditions and must be able to provide adequate information to the treatment team. Investigators are encouraged to contact GW to discuss rationale for unblinding, but it is not mandatory in case of emergency condition. Investigator should report unblinding within 24 hours with the detailed information about rationale, date, and time of unblinding. All information should be documented in case report forms and patient medical record. The responsibilities of monitor are to ensure the study adherence to approved study protocols and compliance with GCP guidelines, Health Canada regulations, and ethics regulations, to ensure proper data collection and documentations, and training of site staff on study protocol procedures, and to provide support throughout the study, and also involved to prepare monitor plan and to conduct regular monitoring visits. In this study, at least 3 on-site visits will be conducted, and the subsequent visit will depend upon the different factors: patient recruitment, patient safety, and compliance with the protocol. So, the visit will be arranged based on CRA, study coordinator, and principal investigator schedules, and the site visit confirmation letter will be sent at least 2 weeks prior to the scheduled visit. Monitor will conduct the closeout visit after the last follow-up of the last patient. During the closeout visit, we will perform these activities which are on this checklist.
Hi everyone, so let's review investigator site file now. The purpose of investigator site file review is to make sure that the study is conducted according to all applicable regulatory requirements and the rights and welfare of the patients are well protected. It contains essential documents which are listed in ICH GCP guidelines E6R2 section 8 and other documents such as any correspondence, emails, any communication between the study staff, etc. Now, this investigator site file may be separated into other site binders. For example, we can separate it into the pharmacy binder where we can keep all the documents related to pharmacy or investigational product. For example, we can also separate it into the laboratory binder where we can keep all the documents related to the laboratory. So documents which goes into the investigator site file are basically divided into 3 steps. Documents which are before clinical trial starts, during the clinical trial, and after the clinical trial. And we need to make sure that these documents are maintained throughout the whole study during each of this step to make sure that the study is conducted well. Now, this is the list of all the documents before the trial. This is during the clinical trial. And this is after the clinical trial. These documents also will be located in investigators file or sponsors file or in both the files. So just in case if you cannot find any document, you can maybe reach out to the study coordinator and ask for the document, and you can locate it into the investigator site file. As per the ICH GCP guidelines, E6R2, section 4.9.5, these documents should be retained at least 2 years after the last approval of marketing application and until there are no pending marketing applications in ICH region, or at least 2 years have passed since the formal clinical development of investigational product has been discontinued. And the investigator also need to make sure that these documents are made available to the monitor, auditor, or REP upon request to review. So now let's review the closing and review of action items. So before we actually start the study, other than the site initiation visit, there are other things that we need to make sure. This is to make sure that the study is conducted the site is well prepared before we actually start the study. So we can create checklist of to-do list so that we can make sure that everything is in place before the study actually starts. This is the list that we can work on. For example, we can make sure that we have REP approval documents, we have all the investigational product supply, we have all the laboratory supplies, we have unblinding procedure in place because this is going to be a blinded trial. So we need to make sure everything is in place, and once we have make sure on this, the study will be ready to conduct it by the site. Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You do have our contact information, so you can certainly reach out to us. Thank you for joining.